Hello, everyone. Today I want to share an amazing story about how learning English helped me reach my dream, my passion, and my success. If you have big dreams, like becoming a doctor, engineer, lawyer, or business person, you need English. It's spoken by over 1.5 billion people around the world, and is a language of travel, business, and the internet. Without English, you might miss great chances like getting a better job, making international friends, or enjoying movies and books in their original language. But don't worry, you can start learning today. If I can do it, you can too. My name is Sophia, and I'm from Brazil. I grew up in a small town, in a middle-class family. My father was a taxi driver, and my mother was a school teacher. They always said that education is the key to success. Since I was a child, my dream was to become a doctor. I remember when I was 10 years old, my younger brother got very sick with a high fever. My parents were crying and scared, but kind doctor came and said calmly, "Don't worry, I'll take care of him." He treated my brother with care and knowledge, and soon my brother was fine. That day, I decided I wanted to become a doctor and save lives too. But as I grew older, I realized that all medical books and research were in English. Even in Brazil, doctors needed English to study and work. But my English was terrible. I went to a public school where we learned very little English. I only knew simple words like hello and how are you. When my teacher asked me to read a sentence, I couldn't understand anything. My classmates laughed, and I went home crying. I thought, how can I become a doctor if I can't even read English? One evening, my father asked me why I was sad. I told him I wanted to be a doctor, but my English was bad. He said, then learn English. Go to a place where everyone speaks English. I told him we didn't have money, but he said, your dreams are important. My parents decided to send me to Canada because people speak English there. It has great schools, friendly people, and it's cheaper than the U.S. or the U.K. They used almost all their savings for my studies and flight. My mother told me, we are giving you everything we have. Promise you won't give up. I promised her with tears in my eyes. Then, with one suitcase, little money, and a big dream, I flew to Canada. When I arrived in Toronto, everything felt strange. The cold weather, the food, and most of all, the language. I couldn't understand what people were saying. At the airport, a man asked me, do you need a taxi? But I didn't understand him at all. That night, I cried in my small room, feeling lost and alone. The next day, I went to my English school. The teacher smiled and said, welcome everyone. Let's introduce ourselves. When it was my turn to speak, my hands were shaking. My name is Sophia, and I am from Brazil. When I came to Canada, my English was very poor. On my first day of class, I stood up to introduce myself. I said, my name is Sophia. I'm from Brazil. I wanted to say more, but my mind went blank and my words didn't come out. Some students laughed, and I felt very embarrassed. That night, I made a promise to myself. No matter how hard it was, I would learn English. My first few weeks in Canada were very hard. Everything was new and strange. In Brazil, I understood everything, but here, I felt like a baby learning to speak again. I noticed many differences in Canada. Students didn't wear uniforms. Some even wore pajamas to school. People liked personal space. They didn't hug or touch much. The weather changed suddenly. 1 minute sunny, the next snowing. People said sorry all the time, even when it wasn't their fault. And the food portions were huge. But the hardest thing was understanding English. People spoke very fast and used slang I had never learned in school. In class, My writing had many mistakes. My teacher told me, "You think in Portuguese and translate to English. That's why it sounds strange." I felt sad because speaking was even harder. I knew the answers in my head, but couldn't say them out loud. I wanted to cry, but I refused to give up. I made a plan. I used a headphone trick. I wore headphones and talked to myself in English while walking on the street, pretending to be on a phone call. I also learned 3 new words every day and stopped using subtitles while watching movies. One day, I went to a coffee shop and promised myself to speak English no matter what. The barista said, "What can I get you?" My heart was racing, but I said, "I would like a cappuccino, please." She asked, "With almond milk or regular milk?" And I answered, "Regular milk, please." It was a short talk, but I felt so proud. I realized English is not about being perfect. It's about being confident. Life in Canada was expensive and hard. I paid rent, food, transport, and English classes, and I worked part-time at a cafe. I woke up early, studied, worked, and studied again at night. I miss my family, but I remembered my parents' sacrifice and kept going. After 4 months, something amazing happened. I stopped translating in my head. When someone asked, "Do you need a bag?" I replied, "No, I have one, thanks," without thinking in Portuguese first. I was finally thinking in English. If you want to learn English, here's my advice. 1. Speak every day, even alone. 2. Stop translating in your head. 3. Talk to native speakers. 4. Surround yourself with English, movies, music, and your phone. 5. Don't fear mistakes. They help you grow. The day I realized I could really speak English was the happiest day of my life. I knew my dream of becoming a doctor was finally possible. Before I tell you that story, let me take you deeper into my life in Canada. The struggles, the strange experiences, and how I finally started speaking English like a native. I had been in Canada for 6 months, and my English was getting better. I could understand people more, order food, and talk to my classmates. But I was still afraid to talk to native speakers because they spoke too fast and used too much slang. I felt stupid when I didn't understand, so I avoided conversations. If someone talked to me, I just smiled or said, "Yeah," even when I didn't understand. One day, I decided to face my fear. I went to my favorite coffee shop and told myself, "Sophia, today you will have a real conversation." A girl next to me said, "Ugh, this line is so long, right?" I was nervous but said, "Yeah, it's really long." She smiled and continued talking, and for the first time, I replied naturally without translating my head. That small talk changed everything. I felt confident for the first time. After that, I wanted to sound more like a native speaker. I started using the shadowing method. I watched TV shows and repeated every line exactly like the actors. Same tone, same speed, same emotion. I also kept a notebook of my mistakes and corrected them every day. For example, instead of saying "I am agree," I learned to say "I agree." I also started making Canadian friends by joining local events, using language exchange apps, and talking to my coworkers. The more I talked to real people, the more natural my English became. Even though my English was improving, life in Canada was still hard. I was always tired from studying, working part-time, and cooking. I missed my family and had very little money. Once, I only had $5 left in my bank account. I sat in my small room and cried, thinking of giving up, but then I remembered why I came. I didn't travel all this way to quit, so I kept going. 5 years later, my life completely changed. Back then, I was a broke student struggling with English. Now, I live in a beautiful apartment, drinking coffee and thinking, I made it. But before that success, I had to pass the IELTS exam to enter medical school. It was one of the hardest things I ever did. The reading was long, the speaking was scary, and the writing was difficult. I studied every day, practiced speaking, and wrote essays. On exam day, I was nervous but told myself, Sophia, you didn't come this far to fail. When I got my results, I passed. I cried with happiness. With my IELTS score, I got into one of the best medical universities in Canada. But medical school was even harder. Everything was in advanced English, lectures, textbooks, reports, and presentations. But I didn't quit. I recorded my lectures, made flashcards, and joined study groups. After years of hard work, I finally graduated as Dr. Sophia Williams. I walked across the stage, took my diploma, and looked up at the sky. This is for you, Mom and Dad. My first job was at a big hospital in Toronto. My first salary was $8,800. I couldn't believe it. I remember the days when I had only $5 left. Now I could help people, save lives, and live the life I dreamed of. One day, a little girl came into the hospital sick and scared. I held her hand and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart, I'll take care of you." Her mother cried and said, "Thank you, doctor." At that moment, I knew I had achieved something truly special. Listen carefully. Never accept being weak or average. Don't wait for someone to save you. Not your parents, not your teachers. Only you can change your life. When I was struggling, I could have made excuses like English is too hard or I don't have money. But I didn't. I worked hard and changed my life. If you're watching this, you also have two choices. One, do nothing and stay the same. Or two, start working on yourself right now. Learn English. Improve every day. Face your fears and change your life. Because when you become the best version of yourself, it feels like the whole world is in your hands. Now, go change your life.